And joining me now, White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. How are you, Hogan?
I'm great. How are you?
All right, good. Thank you. Now, they talk about this, and I want to talk about the border. I keep hearing about this caravan of immigrants traveling through Mexico on their way to us. What's going on? Who are they, and what is happening?
Well, obviously, Mexico is an ally. We're working with them, and I think this is beginning to break up. But what this does is it exposes exactly what's going on in our country that, for whatever reason, Democrats refuse to acknowledge. They pretend it's not urgent that people are coming across into our country illegally. We've seen a 200% increase from March of this year and March of last year of illegal people crossing into this country. 50,000 last month.
50,000 increase.
Last month, absolutely. No, 50,000 last month alone. Were caught at the border coming in here illegally.
So let me ask you this: when the president came in, he declined 70%. Why all of a sudden is it up again?
It declined because of the Trump effect, what he ran on and what he promised. He got in office and no one wanted to come here because they knew they would be deported and they would be subjected to our laws. Instead, Democrats in Congress have obstructed and dithered and haven't fixed the problem. And now smugglers are telling people on the other side of the border, come across, they're not going to do anything. And the number one function of the federal government, as you know, is to protect the American people. President Donald Trump, without fail, without question, and without apology, will do that and has done that since the moment he took office.
Okay, now a couple of things. You said that we're working with Mexico. There was a time when Mexico was allowing those, 150,000, whatever it was, from Central America, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, to come through, and they were letting them in on the trains. Now we've got a better relationship with Mexico?
We're working with them. The president obviously has a good relationship with the president of Mexico. Absolutely. But they're still, Mexico's laws for immigration are much stronger than ours.
Oh, yeah.
They can take a court right to the border, and if they catch you, you're gone within 2 days. We release you in 2 days and say, hey, by the way, there's a court date you have to come back for later. If you're from a Central American country, if you're from Mexico, you can go back immediately. If you're from a Central American country, you come here and they say, come back for a court date to be determined. No one comes back to that court date.
Of course not. And now the Obama catch and release, where we catch you, just what you're talking about, and you can show up if you feel like it, that's over. The president put an end to catch and release.
We are absolutely working to put an end to this immediately. This is one of those egregious loopholes that are in the law that allow people to come here and claim all types of things as it relates to, I want to be free in this country for credible fear, for example. We've seen a 1,700%, 1,700, not 17, not 170, 1,700% increase in people claiming credible fear from their previous countries.
Oh, so they want asylum.
Right, so they want asylum here, and they get it.
Okay, now let's talk about the role that drugs plays in this quick increase of the last month. And by the way, the president making this decision, was this decision made because he didn't get what he wanted in the omnibus bill for the wall?
Look, if Congress doesn't act, the president will. This ultimately, though, if it's going to be fixed in totality, if we're going to have a long-lasting solution that protects this nation, has to be done via Congress. What we've seen are Democrats saying there is no urgency on the border. This is all made up. Not true. The numbers are coming in from DHS. We now understand the waves began in the spring. They realized Congress hasn't done anything. They stood up and said, we'd rather shut down the government, and you'll remember the Schumer shutdown, over hundreds of thousands of people who are here illegally and unlawfully, as opposed to the protection of hundreds of millions of American citizens. And that's where we are.
When I was at the border, Hogan, I actually spoke to people who said they're basically doing their own protection because there is no wall, there is no fence, there is no technology and all that crap that they talk about, that they literally have to keep people and trespassers, illegals, off their property. And they're left to their own devices. If they hurt someone, an illegal, then they end up getting sued.
Right, and that's one of the reasons we put, actually, the president decided to mobilize National Guard to send people down, because it allows us to put more badges on the border, the ones who can actually make the arrests, the ones that can actually detain people who are here illegally, and the ones that can work to send them back to their country.
Okay, now, do we have enough judges? I mean, let's say the National Guard assists in the arrest or in the detention, where do they go? We keep them. We're not releasing them anymore.
The backlog is massive, and that's one of the things we want to do to break that up. And that's one of the things the president asked for in this last piece of legislation. It's what he wanted in the 4 pillars. It's not in there. We've got to have more judges down down there. We've got to have more people on the border. That's what the president's pushing for because we have to protect this nation.
There are a lot of judges who were forced to retire at 70. Maybe the president ought to use them. You know, they'd be happy to show up at the border.
We could send you down there.
Well, you wouldn't have to wear a robe. You could ride your horse in like they did in the old days. Hogan Gidley, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
And joining me now with more reaction on the battle to secure our border, former Pinal County Sheriff Paul Bebu. He served as a major in the Arizona National Guard and commanded 1,200 National Guardsmen in 2006 when President Bush dispatched, as I understand, 6,000 National Guard to the border. That's correct. All right, Sheriff, good to have you here. So thank you. Talk to us on why now. Why is there an increase, and why is the president saying, I've had enough, I want to send the National Guard?
Well, we're seeing now those south of the border are saying, in fact, hey, let's probe, let's test the resolve of this president, because the laws by Congress are still handcuffing our system. This catch and release was still allowed up until this week. So the president did a terrific thing in signing that order, ending catch and release. And Sessions, who's been late to the game, is really pushing hard, and I applaud him for that. What we need, he's sending 4,000 National Guard, and I caution this whole process in this deployment. Because there are some who are advising the president to send, hey, let's send mechanics to fix the Border Patrol vehicles. Let's send admin support so they can do paperwork and they can do some of the surveillance in their communication center. I was the commander of those who did that work, and then also, far more importantly, armed soldiers. Actually issued 120 rounds of ammunition. They were deployed directly on the border. So you had 3 to 5 soldiers right on the border with a military vehicle. We actually had a bank of lights that lit them up at nighttime, so they were in full plain view.
So, Paul, let me ask you this.
Yes.
Could the National Guard was deputized to make arrests?
No, and so I have the law enforcement background and the military. They didn't need to, because that show of force, everyone in the world knows America's military is the most powerful. So those south of the border, you have to understand, you understand this as a judge, nobody wants to get caught. So when they see that show of force, they say, my God, we're not going in through here. So any of these high trafficked or built up areas, that's where you deploy our armed soldiers. And that's what's needed.
All right, quickly, before we end.
Yes.
George Bush did this. Other presidents have done this. When are we going to do it for once and for all? What is it going to take to stop the flow of drugs, human trafficking, and all the illegality that is coming across the border? What's it going to take?
You build the wall. But the two components that worked in Yuma, we had a 94% reduction in illegals and in drug smuggling. And how that worked was streamline, which was prosecute everybody who came across the border and formally deport them. The president, in effect, just ordered that for all 9 sectors of the Border Patrol. So that's win-1 for the president. He set the table. The second part of this, he has to deploy, in my recommendation, armed soldiers to the border. If you're going to send America's military, that's hard force. Don't send a temp service for mechanics and all this other support. Support the Border Patrol. They will come in and make the arrest just as they did in Yuma, and you will see this border is secured once and for all when the wall is built finally with President Trump.
All right, Paul Bebu, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, and David Bossie and Dick Morris still on deck tonight. And next, the new documents that show exactly why Andrew McCabe deserved to be fired from the FBI. Congressman Mark Meadows talking about it with me live right here next.